What's up, everybody? Wes, Dead Air Knife here with Always.
Typical Lydia.
Today's show, we're going to be doing the 1981 slasher classic, Happy Birthday to Me. Virginia, don't go, Virginia.
I was wondering what soundbite you were going to choose because there are so many zany sounds to choose from in this, and the act of slapping a chloroform rag over your face doesn't have a sound. But yeah, I really enjoyed this Wes pick. Like right out the gate, I'll say this was definitely Wes pick, one of Wes's favorite movies. I had not seen it, so this is a really perfect storm, I think, for us.
Honestly, for a soundbite that's accurate to this film, I could have just screeched into the microphone at the top of my lungs.
Yeah, really, a lot of screaming, so many things in this movie don't have a sound. Like, you could be screeching, kill him. The sound the priest makes when he says murder. The amount of times people say bastard in this film is worse ever than the movie Pieces, which it reminds me of in a lot of ways. But like, yeah, you could just say happy birthday to me and start singing it off key, and that would work too.
It really could. Yes, this is indeed a Wes pick. I've been a massive fan of this film for many years, and I don't know exactly when it became kind of this niche little obsession of mine. I remember seeing this film when I was probably a teenager for the first time, and it really became something that I kind of became known for when social media became a thing and people would have birthdays and on Facebook and things like that. I had this one day, I don't even remember who it was. I said, saying happy birthday to somebody is so boring. You know what would be funny? What if I just link the trailer for the film Happy Birthday to Me? And I did that, and then no one said it was funny to them. I just decided that it was funny, which is pretty much my way of going about life. And so for certain people, if I knew you well enough, I would just link that trailer. Then I got bored of that, and it became, I would either give you happy birthday to me or bloody birthday. But for the most part, happy birthday to me. And I've been wanting to do this on the show for a long time, but the timing never really seemed right, or we had better ideas. But since this was in and around my actual birthday, I thought it would be fun to finally pull the trigger on this particular golden era slasher.
We could actually do this every year for your birthday if you want, because there will probably be something to talk about. You know, our shows are typically 1 to 2 hours long, usually not much more than that. I don't think that's enough time. And that's weird for me to say, because I want this show to be an hour and 20 minutes max every time. That's it. Less than that is great. But yeah, I think I could talk about this movie with you for a year or so.
Well, that would be just fine by me. Happy Birthday to Me has Canadian roots to it as well. Just wanted to put that on Front Street, that this is indeed a Canucksploitation film. It was mostly shot in Montreal. There was a couple of shots that were done in Syracuse and places in and around New York. But yeah, for the most part, this was all done in Montreal. So that's really cool. And the weird thing about this is actually produced by John Dunning and Andre Link. And those names sound familiar. It's because they're responsible for My Bloody Valentine. And they actually had made this film first and then immediately went into My Bloody Valentine's production. But the reason why My Bloody Valentine got released first was because they needed to get it out in time for the Valentine's Day release date. And so Happy Birthday to Me would sit for a little while and come out afterwards, even though it was made first.
Interesting. And it was first in a lot of ways. It came out and was in filming right around the same time as Friday the 13th. So you could look at some of these kills or the body discovery specifically, or even just the switcheroo with who is the killer and the who done it kind of aspect of it, and be like, oh, it's just like any other slasher. But it was being conceived while the others were, and it's a case of that, like, great minds thinking alike, or the great cash grab that was happening in horror, or the tax shelter system here that was producing a lot of horror at the time. So they weren't really riffing off of too many things. They were, sort of creating all of this at the same time, and it predated quite a lot of the things that you would think it would have been ripping off.
You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought that up because that actually conveniently goes into the next thing that I wanted to say about the weird realm of this early days of the golden era of slashers. Because as we know, it takes a long time to get movies up off the ground. And if you look at things that predate Halloween from 1978, there's lots of examples of slashers and proto slashers that kind of fit the bill. Obviously, there's films like Black Christmas and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and
Twitch of the Death Note.
exactly, good old Bay of Blood and Alice, Sweet Alice. Speaking of Friday the 13th, there is another backwoods slasher film with a humongous killer that would predate Friday the 13th, The Prey. That film was being made at the exact same time as Friday the 13th, and that film fell into obscurity, whereas Friday the 13th, became a global phenomenon. But it's one of those things that really makes you realize that any one of these films that was gestating in and around this time could have been the one that everyone looked to as the shot across the bow. Now, it just so happened that you had the brilliant script by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill and the wondrous thing that is Halloween. And that really didn't create a genre so much as it informed Hollywood that there was a way to make a lot of money off of a relatively inexpensive and simple concept. And so a million other ideas flowed from that. John Carpenter very much admitted, and Bob Clark confirms this, that he asked him about what a sequel to Black Christmas would look like, probably something around Halloween. John Carpenter made it his own along with Deborah Hill. But again, all of these things inform everyone else. And so to say that Happy Birthday to me, sometimes I get a little defensive. This movie's a little bit of a mess, but it's an immaculate mess. And sometimes it gets lumped into the rip-off holiday slasher category where it's just lumped in with a whole bunch of other things. And that's not entirely accurate, although there were changes to this film that definitely reflected the success of Halloween. It was in gestation for quite a long time. And so I just wanted to put that out there and just, in my defense of Happy Birthday to me, I think kind of a lesser known slasher, perhaps not to horror fans, but definitely to the general public, this kind of slipped through the cracks.
It's It's definitely one of those films that I wanted to get to and knew about. And I went through this with Alice, Sweet Alice, for whatever reason, not watching it until a quite late date, even though it was one of those films that I passed by in the rental store over and over and over again. And I don't know what made me pick up House instead of it or this, because the covers were interesting, the backs were interesting. I don't know, it had known actresses, and they were Canadian. Maybe that's part of why I passed them by, because it's no secret that we're our own worst critics when it comes to exploitation, and we often don't or haven't seen these films for whatever dumb reason. But I don't know why I passed this by. But you're right, it is quite famous as far as, it supersedes cult following. It really does, because it's bigger than that. There is a cult following for sure, like there are with lots of other films or like pieces, but it has outgrown its cult following, and it is quite common now, with especially because of like those sort of film houses that are reprinting things. You got your Vinegar Syndromes and your the synapses or whoever the hell is redoing movies like Shout or whatever, Scream Factory. Um, all these places that are rediscovering all of these old films. So I don't even know if this, I think because of its name and its um, relation to those other holiday films, it is much bigger than we suspect. And I'm sure a lot of non-horror fans have watched this for sure. It's probably been on TV a lot more than I could ever recall. I don't know why I didn't watch it though. It's like a mystery.
It's hard to say why we choose one thing over another, but the good news is if you've seen it now, because I made you watch it. Sometimes I think when it comes to certain horror films, what people remember the most about something is probably the poster. Ghoulies is a good example of something that I'm sure a lot of people remember the poster. House, that's another good example about people who probably remember a very famous poster. And I think that image of the open face, of the open mouth with the shish kebab going through it, and all of the possibilities that could be surrounded by that whole scenario really would stand out to people going past the covers in a video store.
I think it was the shish kebab that turned me off because shish kebab itself, maybe not so much now because they're readily available in every grocery store. Um, that was something that the more affluent barbecuer had more access to than the typical blue collar barbecuer when I was a kid. And I was 5 when this movie came out, so I was 10 by the time I got very interested in horror and probably saw this a lot, and it probably said to me, "This is going to be Porky's Revenge style horror that I'm not interested in watching." I made that mistake with Party Animal. It tricked me with that cover. I thought it was gonna be have a like a horror camp quality to it, which it did not. It was produced by Playboy. Like, what was I thinking? But this particular film, because of the cover, I thought it was going to be that. I thought that it was going to be, or National Lampoons. Another thing that was to me highbrow, lowbrow was lowbrow comedy for the discerning connoisseur and people who could relate to those affluent, in my point of view, from my point of view at the time, being a 70s kid from a blue collar family, this affluent, unattainable sort of thing that was pawned off as commonplace. And I think I did hit that nail on the head for without watching it. It's a prep school kind of thing, and it does deal with this affluent lifestyle, and the fact that they're sitting in a giant mansion in front of a roaring fire on a bearskin rug eating shish kebab is, at the time, would have been something unattainable to most because pineapples were fucking expensive.
I mean, pineapples are still pretty expensive. You got to catch it on the right day, I think. I had never really thought about it like that, honestly. I think that I wonder that if one of the things about this film that can kind of be a detriment towards it would be just the fact that the promises of the poster are never really met. I mean, that scene does happen, but it's quite different uh, in the film. And I had wondered that when you're thinking about it, when you're thinking about this film and how it's laid out, it can be a little hard to follow for starters. And it can be a little bit of a letdown to people who maybe want that extra campy, extra silly, going right for the pure exploitation. And even though there is a mania around this film that I think is quite unrepeatable amongst the other slashers that were coming out in and around the era, at the same time, it's somehow miraculously more measured in its pacing than perhaps people who want a slasher to be. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that this was never really intended to be a slasher the way that we would think of them.
And I don't think that very, very particular subgenre of horror had really even come into its own. And we were dealing more with the Hitchcockian psychological dramas, or giallo, or even just an all-out splatter fest of like a latter day giallo, or a Gordon Herschel Lewis kind of thing.
It's also really important to remember that to modern audiences, when we think about these films coming out in this particular era, and when the character of Randy very famously set forth the rules of what a slasher is and forever will be, and then we have this wave of meta slashers and neo slashers that were coming out that were really doubling down on this formula. Back then, this formula, in my opinion, is mostly a myth. You can find these elements in a lot of these stories, but even though this film is a slasher, it 100% is, it also isn't concerning itself with what people in 2025 think a slasher is. It really is just trying to make a story that the writers and directors and the actors thought would be an interesting story to tell. We are now retroactively applying things to it that doesn't really hold on to what they had actually ended up creating.
Now you could really shoehorn Virginia here into the final girl mold if you wanted to try. She doesn't fit. Spoiler alert, she does not fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into that, but fuck all that, Lydia. What is this movie even about anyways?
It is really about the haves and have-nots. I wanted to make some sort of gods and clods joke, but it doesn't really work in this aspect. But it's very much like a VC Andrews pining for something in the past that you felt that your family felt was rightfully theirs, and that sort of hard scrabble towards affluenza. It's not, you don't understand where this weird dichotomy is coming from in your weird little college town that you grew up in, but you're, some sort of black sheep for whatever reason, and you're fighting to get out of that, I suppose. And you don't understand the past whatsoever, but you see these distinct lines between haves and have-nots, and your clique, and how really dastardly these people really are is something that you're entirely blind to.
There's an aspect to the characters of this particular film which I think leans into this question that maybe people might have in the back of their minds while watching it, perhaps even in the front of their minds. But why would anyone want to be friends with these people at all? And it comes down to, I think, explained rather neatly, that because they're rich and will one day be powerful people, and this is just good for your personal status. To hell with the fact that they're a bunch of hooligans that can't be trusted with their own vehicles or your safety. They are people who like each other for sure, support each other, I suppose, but also at the drop of a hat are ready to go at each other's throats or anyone else around them.
I would like to go to like Cape Cod and like Martha's Vineyard, or Amity, and see if there are not little groups of well-off old money teenagers run amok and having like vehicular dares as entertainment, and destroying the mood nightly at the local pub, because like we don't have that same sort of storybook VC Andrews affluence surrounding us, but we do have these quaint little towns. Is there families like this that wreck up Almont every day? I'd love to know.
That would be worth looking into, honestly. But you would have to imagine that a lot of this characterization comes from somewhere. If not, it's the impression that writers and directors would have about what characters like this might be like. There's also compulsion, I believe, to fit as many red herrings in this movie as humanly possible, although they do lean fairly heavily on one character in particular right from the get go.
There is something interesting about this story in that we know one thing right off. It's not whose birthday it is, though, I will tell you. It's about 22 minutes into the movie before we figure out who the fuck is having a birthday. But, and that, like, hello, writers, please don't leave your audience hanging quite like that, because wow, that was annoying to me. We know that the killer is known. Bernadette, a young girl, is terrorized in a parking garage at the university here. And one thing that we do know is that she seems to know who the killer is.
Yes, and eagle eyed viewers would notice that the killer is wearing a particular scarf, a scarf in which all of the students that are attending this uh, prep school. It's like, yeah, it's like, it's not a high school, it's not a college, it's kind of somewhere in between. Bernadette, amongst all of these kids, are the senior class snobs, as the trailer will tell us. They are the top 10, the elite, most richest and popular and best students that go to this particular school. This chase sequence is absolutely fascinating in the same way that you would wondered, have you ever seen somebody do an opening stock and slash sequence that is this padded out? There is a moment that I absolutely adore, and I'd love to know your thoughts on it. But there's this moment in which you think you're going to get a fairly standard strangulation, and Bernadette seems to succumb to being choked in a car and seems to die. But in moments later, she springs back to life and is able to make her escape. And I love this sequence.
I absolutely love this sequence too. Like, and it's weird. Those that listen to Dead Air regularly will probably understand that we, for some strange reason, really love a good strangulation scene. We like the realism of this as well. And I often try to not cross over our fictional murderers and murderesses into serial killers because a lot of people don't like that. And I often don't like doing that either, taking that fantastical picture of a murderer and likening it to a real life murderer. But a lot of serial killers talk about how hard it is to strangle somebody. It really is. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of strength. They often don't go down easy. And this really shows that. This parallels a pretty realistic scene. And that makes it all the more harrowing because we're used to that sort of like a cowboy western, bang bang, I got shot, fall down, die. Like people don't do that. They leak to death. It's disgusting, it's harrowing, it takes a long time, it's heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, and you have to be very strong if you're going to kill someone with your own bare hands. And this is shown, and just that will to live and fight. Although we don't have the flight, we have a very, very awkward sequence where she goes through a very rough strangulation with it, and it's very cinematic as well because we have these cute white tights and high heels. She looks so good, and we have those kicking white tighted legs. It's a very cinematic, well done scene. Like the whole film's shot extremely well. The sound I have a problem with, but the film looks great and this scene looks great. And she gets away from this black gloved strangulation killer. And she gets away by away I mean 3 feet away. And she stops and she waits and she gets grabbed again by this the strange acting of this killer who is just sort of creeping through cars at this point after her. And she escapes again to only go 3 feet away and wait, cowering in the shadows. Like, it is weird.
This film was shot at a university in Montreal, and I would imagine that it was active at the time. There's a question that I have about it in which did they only have a small amount of space to actually work with? Were they given one corner of a parking lot? They had to light it, and they said, okay, we have to shoot this, but we don't have a lot of time, and we can't really move the cameras, or we can't, because everything's on sticks on top of that. So I think that this seems like a decision that was based off of filming limitations, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense. I was feeling like they should have maybe injected something, like she thought she knew the killer at that point, or the attempted killer at that point, because of her like standing away only a few feet and like waiting for them to come at her again, almost. Like, even if unintentionally, if she would have said, okay, it's not funny, you can stop now, kind of thing, it would have led us to believe maybe she knew them. But your idea of space limitations makes so much more sense, like really so much more sense. And trying to pass it off as if she'd scurried away far enough, with air quotes around far enough, because she obviously didn't, because we have a pretty good idea of what sort of space. We know how big a car is and how big a typical parking garage is, and the space between cars we're pretty aware of. So they don't play that spatial trick with cameras like they think they did. If they thought they did, I would have cut out the middle part of that scene, quite honestly.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wonders if it was just padded for time. The film's not all that long to begin with, but it is very bizarre, particularly when we have a hand that reaches through a window to grab her. And you're right, she does look like she takes 2 steps and thinks to herself, oh my God, am I glad that's over with?
Exactly. Until she gets strangled for real and killed and like her throat cut.
Yeah, we are going to get some cutaway kills. This is not going to be the most graphic slasher in the world. The nicest thing that I can say is that at the very least, we know what is happening to these characters. It's not so egregious that you're cutting away and we just think to ourselves, oh, okay, well, I guess those characters are dead, which will be useful because there are going to be sequences in which some of these characters walk off the screen, and that's the end of them. We will never see those characters again. Presumably they're alive, but we don't actually really know. What we do know, Lids, was old Bernadette was on her way to meet her top 10, the elite people, at the Silent Woman Tavern, a raucous place filled with like lodge members just singing at the top of their lungs 100 bottles of beer on the wall. First of all, that's a dumb song. Don't sing that. Secondly, they get interrupted. Their shenanigans get interrupted. And then they're going to repeat the song over again. Now, they are bothering the senior class snobs who are all sitting there, all wearing those nice scarves. And then Virginia, old fresh-faced Virginia, is going to be entering the tavern a little late.
What I thought was weird with the scarves, we had to look it up because me and Chris had watched this film together, and he had mentioned, like, why are they all wearing the same scarves? The closest I've ever come to dealing with school people who wear scarves is Harry Potter, like many people, especially here in Canada, where apparently we only have the 2 schools that deal with scarves. And I think Loyola is one where they also did some pickup photography here, and maybe McGill or something else. Like they're colleges of the universities here that use scarves. Very few of them. In the US, it's much more popular. There's many different scarf patterns out there that are probably a lot more recognizable. And they picked a pretty interesting pattern of this like blue and brown kind of thing. It's a pleasing color pattern anyway, but it really does create like a nice visual pattern within this. And no pun intended in the pattern of the scarf, but it is this visual pattern. And the first thing you're thinking is, oh, well, the killer wears a scarf. And you're immediately introduced to this large group of elite teenagers that all wear the same scarf, of course. So I really like that actual tactic within this. And I do like that it is a 1980s teen horror cycle movie, if you could call it a teen horror cycle. If you're thinking we made a weird jump from 1990s teen horror cycle films to this, well, we start out with a killer in the back of a car and meet a group of teenagers.
You're absolutely right about that. I hadn't really put that together. Sometimes I'm just like, we do the next movie because we want to do the next movie, guys. Don't think about it too much. But no, in this case, it absolutely makes sense. We're going to have a red herring coming in here with the form of Alfred, the creepiest motherfucker that ever did walk this goddamn earth. I don't know why he is. This is the. No one really seems to like him, and yet he's also part of the group. I wonder if it's just out of the fact that he's rich, he's powerful, he is a good
It's gotta
student,
be. Mhm.
because that is the qualification for you to be one of these top 10 students. And he's going to bring a little mouse, and it's going to George, and they're going to get into a fight with these lodge people, and there's a big brouhaha. And one of the things to keep in mind with this film is, do you think for 5 seconds that this is just going to be one raucous scene of these characters all screaming and shouting while also laughing and talking amongst themselves, and then we're going to get back to normal characters? No, this is who they are. This is who they are as a people, fighting with people, yelling at each other in groups, screaming their heads off. This is who they are down to their very core, Lydia.
Trying to decide who's dating who is ridiculous, and have fun in this film trying to pinpoint who's dating who, because they start out with like sort of partner swapping, and they're just a loud, raucous, annoying group of people. And no, it doesn't end. They leave there to play the game, as they say. And I don't know. I've never known of any, like, things you see in movies where people are like, oh, we're going to do the ritual. We're going to go out and light so and so farmer's scarecrow on fire like we do every year, or like these weird little teenage rituals. I've, of course, never been a part of a group like this, thank God, because they're horrible people. But what a horrible routine or a ritual or game they play with jumping over a bridge. Like the closest bridge we've ever dealt with like this would be the one in Merrickville, I think, maybe, that spins. It doesn't lift, it spins when the boats are going by. But like, I couldn't see anyone fucking with that. Even the most crazy, affluent, out for a good time, doing it for the lulz kind of person wouldn't fuck with this.
The scene in the game in question is this. You see when a boat is passing underneath the bridge and they need to raise the bridge in order to let the boat pass. This is the opportunity for these people to basically be like the Dukes of fucking Hazard, and they are going to attempt to jump this gap. Now, it is about who can get there first, and then also who does not chicken out. It behooves you to get there as soon as possible, because the wider the gap, obviously the more danger, and obviously the more chance of you losing your nerve. They junked so many cars doing these stunts in real life. And what's hysterical is the one that has Virginia in it is the last car to go, not the last car to one person chickens out, but the last vehicle to make this jump is so obviously destroyed, but it is not part of the narrative whatsoever. This thing almost flips completely forward onto its like rolls, and pieces of it are going flying everywhere, and there's no acknowledgement of that. And my thought process is like, guys, is there not a better fucking shot of this where it's not so obvious that you destroyed this car doing this stunt? there's no way that this car would drive. That's not really the relevant portion of this. The relevant part, Lids, the relevant part of this is that Virginia is going to run into the woods into hysterics. And they're not necessarily going to go after her, although one fucking dude does. But she is going to, they're going to say, don't worry about it. She lives right over there. Not before she has to cross a graveyard where she stops to mourn and tend to the garden, or sorry, to the gravestone of her mother. So this fucking sequence, what do you think of it, Lydia? Because holy shit, we're like less than 10 minutes into this movie, and I feel like from the moment we leave the bar to the end of this actual night where Virginia screams is a tour de force.
It truly is, with annoying people. We get the establishment that they are these affluent people because they're kicked out of the bar for the umpteenth time. And it's sort of like, I don't care how rich you are, get the hell out of my bar sort of thing. And they all jump into their Corvettes and go on this daredevil game that they play, except Etienne, who is the French exchange student that drives a motorcycle or dirt bike. It's more like a dirt bike, but yeah. And it's Etienne that follows her to the graveyard. And I do like, of course, the graveyard setting, and it's adorable that she goths out and hangs out at her mom's grave and keeps shears in a box conveniently beside it. And you know, the question of, do you keep utensils beside the graves you tend? No, usually don't. But she lives beside the graveyard. For all I know, this is a family plot because this estate she lives on is quite big and it has a massive guest house, which we get to way later. But it's not totally explained just how big this vast estate is. And I really tend to think that this is a family plot. And that's why there's shears there handy for her to come mourning at midnight after being drunk with her friends or whatever she does. But Etienne stops her like he's going to, I don't know, he says, I'll walk you home, and she cottons onto that right away and is like, no thanks, don't need you. But he like manhandles her. Everyone manhandles her in this film, so get used to it.
Etienne is a fucking ghoul. I can't. This film wants you to think everyone is the killer. Just straight up. They want you to think everyone is dangerous and a killer. Even if he's not the killer, this sequence is going to end with her running after a dangerous stunt into the woods, her tending her mother's grave, her getting stopped, manhandled by Tien. Then she is going to go and get into an argument with her father, who obviously
basically kind of makes out with her.
Yeah, that definitely is it. Then we're not out of here yet, gang. We're not, because now she's going to listen to music, strip down to her underwear, go and take a shower. Etienne is going to steal her underwear, which she won't learn until later, but going to spy, like literally spying on the argument with her father, spying on her getting ready to go take a shower, spying on her in her bedroom, and then she is going to run to an open window after she sees the shadowy man leave her fucking property, and then she's going to scream at the top of her lungs, and then we're finally out of here. It's the next day. What a clusterfuck of a sequence of events, and it makes you wonder what even is happening.
No, and it would be very convenient if Etienne was missing, because this becomes a trend of her having a weird night, waking up the next day and shit's gone sideways, but nothing's gone sideways yet. Etienne still creeps on her and still tries to feel her up and everyone else around her, and is constantly trying to, you know, get her attention in the creepiest, most horrible way. When he does eventually own up to having her panties, which we'll get to in a bit, she passes it off like, oh yeah, he's so full of himself, or whatever she says. It's like, wow, this guy is dangerous, like really dangerous. It's crazy to me that you all have him in friend circle. It's crazy to me that no one else around thinks he's being a creeper. This is where you'd probably want to hear the Me Too kind of stuff. Like, oh yeah, he definitely broke into my bedroom as well, like that sort of thing. But she passes it off like nothing. Everyone around them passes it off like nothing. And I don't use the word very often, but he is problematic.
To say the least. And there is going to be some very curious decisions amongst all of the characters, even people who we're supposed to be rooting for on some level, just epically bizarre behavior. One of the thought processes that they had, J. Lee Thompson was the guy that directed this, and there was John Saxon, Peter Jobin, and Timothy Bond were all the people that handled the script. A lot of script writers, to give you an indicator of where we're at with this film. But the thing to remember is they really wanted to have a story in which they had a very unreliable narrator. So I believe that they were trying to establish that Virginia is kind of hard to understand where she is mentally, because she keeps having these episodes where she blacks out, she misremembers things. Her father obviously indicates to her that he doesn't even really want her going to her mother's grave. It's too traumatizing. And it's hard to disagree with him, as creepy as he comes off, because she immediately starts having episodes. And we know that Etienne was on the premises, but why she would be screaming other than the fact that she was scared, maybe this kind of thing happens to her all the time, because by the next day, everyone is sitting in class ready to learn. All these fucking dorks sitting right up front in class all together. And they are going to know that their antics at the tavern will not be tolerated in the future. And that goes for all of you. We want you guys to shape it up and fly right. And where's Bernadette? Well, I know she was going to the tavern with you guys, but apparently she didn't show up. And I'm sure she's probably fine, though. And this is the first time that characters realize that one of them could be missing. And this aspect of the film is interesting to me, because at no point do they really feel all that concerned that members of their group are going missing, because they know this. They do know that people are going missing.
What's weird is it doesn't really become a thing for them until like 3 or 4 of them are missing, right? So get used to that. I think a lot of the explanation for their, script writing aside, that they want a unreliable narrator, we're coming out of like that 50s and 60s trad wife, 50s mom, Christian fundamentalist run amok sort of a thing where women wore tights with their pants so you wouldn't see their skin. They wore longer dresses. They smiled at everybody, no matter how horrible they were being to them. I was born in the tail end of this, so was, caught up with a lot of this white nightgown smile when you're spoken to kind of bullshit that women were supposed to conform to. And these young women are exactly in that. They are trad wives in training. So men are supposed to be able to be unbelievably, obtrusively horrible and lecherous to them. And they're supposed to, shoo them off like a fly if they can and smile. Like that's really how they're supposed to be. So I think it really fits, whether it was intentional or not. And it comes across as like even more horrific now. That's part of the horror of this film to me, is the amount of women who are just passed around like some sort of strange trinket and dressed up like a strange trinket. And the amount of looking cute and being sweet and smiling that these women do is crazy to me. It gives Stepford Wives a run for its money because at least they were a little bit of hippie, forward-thinking women at one point. But here we've got a lot of like really brainwashed, uh, does not pass the Bechdel test kind of women. So it's kind of terrifying in that way. And I think that it just, just the zeitgeist worked with the writers of this film to make it even more unsettling. Even like the father, he's like an unintentional red herring because at the time in the 80s, early 80s, 70s, uh, people of the 70s might not have looked at him as a lech and might not have looked at their behavior as untoward. The fact that she kisses her father on his mouth is like, what? Gross. But it might have just come across as fairly normal to a lot of people back then. Even Etienne's behavior, unfortunately, would have come across as somewhat normal. A little weird, but not like alarm bell red flag raising like it does today.
I think something about the way that they intermingle with each other, it's almost as if right now, before we're paired off officially, and marriage wouldn't be for love anyway, it would be about what societal advantages could the two of us and our families possibly get up to. Maybe it is this aspect that it's a free for all because sooner or later we're all going to be in the upper echelons of society, so we may as well blow off steam and have a good time now. Virginia's father, whatever the hell he does, he is exceedingly wealthy. Like this property, this house, this is absolutely insane. And it is just the two of them. We are going to see the interesting aspects of this group dynamic. Everyone's got a thing, Lydia, or at least I should say all the dudes have a thing. You know, sometimes they're creepy artists and other times they're dirt bikers and sometimes they're soccer players, and they all have their extracurriculars and everyone just goes to them. Everyone just hangs out with each other.
I really want to ask my friend's daughter, Abby, I want to ask her, as a motocross enthusiast, is it sportsmanlike to kick your opponents off their bikes and off the track? Because I do not think it is. She's an award-winning motocross enthusiast, and yeah, I they have this race, and people are watching, and people are screaming at the top of their fucking lungs. This isn't the kill him scene that we alluded to earlier.
No, no, that's Rudy's soccer game. A soccer game.
A
And
soccer
and who's screaming kill him? Virginia.
Yeah, which is like, and it's harrowing actually because it's at the top of her lungs, and screaming women in this film, if that gets to you, this might be one to avoid because there's a hell of a lot of it, a hell of a lot of it. But here they're all screaming like go go go, get them, go, like at the top of their lungs. They're climbing over one another like monkeys, and a lot of the times the men are behaving a lot like monkeys, and it's that sort of weird meatballs kind of humor and gooniness that I found apparent in My Bloody Valentine as well, where two of the guys in that film behave like stooges and just are over the top comedic, trying to be that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern or whatever that they're trying to do, be a comic relief. But all the boys, all of them in this film act like that. They're making goony faces, they're saying goony things. They're one of them is a like a addictive gambler who's always betting people $20 for fucking everything, but it's always they're making a huge show of it. Like, did you find it just so ridiculously off-putting? Is it just a sign of the times for films like this or at this time where people behaved in a unbelievably cartoonish manner?
No, and in fact, I didn't really notice it the first few times that I would watch this film. My initial impression of this film, even from a very young age, was just how disjointed it was. And if anything, the elevated and manic performances of all of these characters just contribute to this extremely bizarre, extremely specific reality that this film is crafting. And it only is as I became older and I had seen this film a few more times, and even now, as we are sitting down properly to analyze what we're watching, it became even more obvious just how hysteric all of these characters are. And you could contribute it to just being hot-blooded use, but there's something about the fact that everyone is just on edge. They're a hair's breadth away from complete and utter loss of control.
They truly are. And if there was a line tossed out here and there about, like, why are you making faces continuously like you're at the zoo entertaining monkeys or whatever, they could say, like, because we can do whatever we want in this town, but there's none of that. And not even from a sinister standpoint, which would make it a whole different movie, really, if they were very sinister in there, we can do whatever we want. There is a certain level of playfulness in it. They could get away with mentioning that, but no, they just, try and create, like you said, this like very unique world that these people live in. But I ain't buying it. Like they're out of control wackadoos, all of them.
Fortunately, we are going to cull the herd a little bit. And the first one to get his comeuppance, perhaps deservedly so. You see, Lids, it's bad enough that you were to break into someone's house and steal their underwear. You were going to use it as your good luck charm and then throw them on the ground. You are scum sucker number one in my book. And I could tell you that there are certain characters that are giving Etienne some very unpleasant looks as he is going about his showboating for his horrid behavior. Alfred checks him out, not too happy with that. Virginia has some obviously is not pleased with him. But then he is going to get his comeuppance because somebody, black gloved killer, is going to shove his stupid ass scarf into the spoke of his dirt bike and going to rev the engine, and it's going to bring him to an untimely demise. I wish, particularly in this scene, that we weren't cutting away from the gore, because this would have been a deliciously vicious scene had it not been cut away from. Bernadette's death, the head flies back, we see the razor slice. It's good enough. It's not Friday the 13th, but it's good enough. This, I get what they were going for. I just wish it was more blatant.
There is a good spray of blood, and we do have no shortage of blood in this film. We even get it literally painting the walls. But yeah, it is a cutaway, and it's such an abrupt cutaway. They could have shown something else. And if that is your choice, at least do some pickups. Modern filmmakers probably do this all the time. Like, well, we'll shoot this for the ratings and see if it gets cut. We'll at least have his hand holding the back of a head or some shit to put in there. Here we get nothing. We get a cutaway. There are some stills that exist online. There's a blog out of the UK that has collected quite a lot of information on this film, and it does have a shot of Bernadette laying on the asphalt in the parking garage, and it has a shot of a face being held up to the wheel. It's blurry, but we can see what's going on there, and it looks pretty good, actually. The effect probably passed muster, and because there's a still of a head being held to the wheel, I have a feeling that there was a reel of this, that there was a good amount of this effect shot, but oh well, lost to time.
We are going to get some special effects and effects within effects. And not since Friday the 13th Part 4, has there been a more confusing ability of somebody to make a prosthetic? But old Alfred, he is not the athletic type, Lids, okay? He's not the type of guy that's going to be riding a motorcycle. He opted out of playing the game. If you had noticed that, he got in his little Vespa thing and he went in the other direction. He will not be goaded into this weird performance. He seems to hover around Virginia a lot, and he has been acting a little strange lately. And I think it's only fair that Anne, by the way, is a character we haven't mentioned. Anne is perhaps Virginia's closest female friend within the group. It's hard to say. She's quite a muted character, but they're going to go check out Alfred's house. And wouldn't you know it, not only is he acting like the creepiest motherfucker on planet Earth, Bernadette's severed head is right there on the table.
I like this scene quite a lot. Anne's weird. Anne's a weird kind of gadabout girl. I think that she's also dating every man here, it seems. Um, yeah, I can't really pin her down, except she's everywhere you want to be. She's fine with sneaking into Alfred's house, and he's really like the Arnie Cunningham from Stephen King's Christine kind of guy.
Looks
Seems to
like him
be
too.
anyway. Yeah, looks quite a lot like him. And the actor, he's a Canadian actor. I forget his first name, but his last name's Blum. And I was hoping against hope that he was related to the famous Jason Blum, but it doesn't appear he is, which would be neat if he was. But he's still active in the scene and works in Toronto as a script consultant and stuff like that. So who knows? Maybe he looked back at this film and was like, well, it needed a script doctor, which is my thoughts exactly. Um, yeah, really cool guy. But he played an interesting character that could have been fleshed out a little bit more because we did not know until being shown that he is an effects wizard, that he's an effects wizard. You know, he just seemed to be creepy. It would have explained him entirely if it was like, no, he's a monster kid.
Yeah, they could have made him like Radish from Final Exam, just a character who is almost meta in the sense that he knows a lot about horror films and comments in Final Exam. If you've any of you have ever seen that particular film, it's dull as toast on some aspects, but Radish is a great character. It's a guy in Gene Slasher, which actually has a very similar kill to the one that old Greg succumbs to. Old barbell across the throat. That's a classic, isn't it? Like where you have somebody working out.
Yeah, me and my cousin, as kids, very young kids, had our hands on our first camera and decided to recreate murder scenes. And this was one of them, which I'm sure he would have seen this film. Probably he was a couple years older than me. So that's probably what he was recreating. But I have a picture of my cousin dead by barbell somewhere.
Yeah, and this scene is got some great gurgling and again blood just being thrown all over the place. Greg is great. Has a conversation with the killer. Again, we're establishing quite early on Bernadette knew who this was. Also, Greg knows who this is because he asked this person to help him with the weights and is having a conversation about his love life and what he can do about it and this, that, and the other thing. And so for a fact, this is somebody within the top 10.
Yeah, somebody who has a scarf of their own, for real. So it's definitely like a teenager of some sort because the faculty do not wear these scarves. And there's not a lot of faculty that we meet. Like we get to meet the headmistress and we see the one science teacher um, who does the frog legs thing, making the frog's legs jump with electrostatic electricity in class. And so we don't really meet a lot of the other adults. The other adult that we do meet, of course, her father, who goes away on his Exxon Valdez spill business trip or whatever the hell is going on when he does leave, because it is her birthday. We've established that. But her doctor is the only other adult that we meet. He does not also wear a scarf.
It would be weird too if it was him because people would be saying, who the fuck is this very old man, old Dr. Faraday? Have you ever heard of an on call psychiatrist?
Only in films. Only in films. And often they get roped into your crazy fantasies, a la conspiracy theory or 12 monkeys. Yeah, it's almost like a live-in psychologist at that point. On-call psychiatrist, I don't know, Loomis kind of was.
Yeah, gun toting on call psychiatrist, FBI agent. There is aspects of Dr. Faraday where it seems like all he does is sit in a chair next to Virginia while she sleeps and then waits for her to wake up screaming so he can grab her by the shoulders and shake her.
Holy monkey tug and Christ. I really want to rewrite this film right now. I was going to save this for the end, but I'm going to just put it out there because it does not ruin the end. If you're, concerned about our spoiler cast ways and you're going to skip the last few minutes, don't worry. I would love to see a rewrite to inject this man a little further into their lives and maybe not make him a more believable red herring or anything, but just have him be believable and actually fix a little bit of maybe the Anne sequences and having Anne be her friend question mark. Let Anne be her friend for real. Let Anne be her like be his daughter. Let Anne be the psychologist's daughter. It would explain why he has open access to their fucking house, why he can just go into their house. If he was a family friend for real and not just her doctor, like we do get into sequences explaining that there is like a very close relationship with her and her psychologist because she's been being treated for years, 4 years to be precise, which it's weird that a lot of these people have been in college for 4 years or prep school for 4 years. That's very weird, but okay. If Anne or someone, maybe even Bernadette, make the opening sequence happen to Virginia, make Bernadette be a sister to Anne or a friend of the family's so that they have a little more understandable injection into Ginny's life and maybe a little more believable of like let's attack people around you kind of thing. It would tighten up this cast quite a lot. It would remove I'm never a fan of like, oh, you meet this character for 4 seconds, you have no attention to them, but they're the first death. I'd rather it be a false death or a botched attempt on the main character's life to keep some of these characters alive a little longer and closer to her and have her have some sort of friend, even if it was a false friend or a friend of circumstance, like most of them are to one another. I think it would have really helped this story quite a lot, especially the injection of this doctor.
There's one scene in particular that taints all of these Dr. Faraday scenes to me, which makes it seem quite inappropriate. I don't know.
One scene? There's one scene?
Well, it's the scene in which he is looming over her and she kisses his hand. And to me, I was like, this is a level of intimacy that I feel the very obvious age difference. The fact of the matter is that they're the only two in the house, literally ever. These two characters only interact with each other. And it's just it gives this idea about where is this going, what is this level of intimacy, and if we're trying to say that there is no level of intimacy between the characters, the long shots of this dude's face looking at her the way that he does, again, it makes it seem like you are trying to pull an angle that maybe he has inappropriate feelings towards his patient. I don't know. I'm not saying that they're doing that. I'm just saying that that's what I kept getting from it and continue to get from some of those scenes that just seem weird.
It would explain away the fact that she is being drugged regularly and not noticing it if she had been regularly drugged for 4 years and not noticed it. Um, his behavior, I definitely pass it off as just this weird leftover post-war 1950s, 60s, 70s Christian fundamentalists, Molly Mormon, stay sweet, be sweet, obey kind of thing where men can do basically whatever they want, especially to pretty women. And eventually they start to have a little bit of Stockholm syndrome and just go along with this bullshit. Yeah, the kissing of his hand was weird. Just the amount of hugging that they do is off-putting, and the fact that he drags her around by her wrist all of the fucking time is egregious. But I mean, looking at it, he's not behaving much different than a lot of men in film up until the 1980s.
When Anne and Virginia are encountering Alfred's head and they realize that it is indeed a fakey fake thing, all seems well. I guess they're just going to take that for what it is. Now, Virginia gang is a little high strung. This is because there very much is a tragedy connected with the death of her mother. Now, they indicate this fairly early on in the script, but they are going to at least spell it out for us a little bit more in another extremely elevated scene in which we are getting a lot of information that a sequence not unlike the game that they play in which a car plunges into deep water.
Now, this would be the scene where they trashed 11 cars.
We know that Virginia was locked in her car with her mother. Her mother stuck in there, and Virginia was going to escape through the skin of her teeth out the window. And this was going to traumatize her. Now, her mother commanded her to leave. It was something that, you would want to save your kid more so than save yourself. And if you're trapped, you don't want your kid staying behind and you both dying. So she is going to nobly command her daughter to escape, which of course Virginia does.
I think that there's some sort of like rule about if you're in a sinking car, you have to open two windows or something, or else you won't be able to get out of it or something. But yeah, it's quite an interesting scene, where we get it in bits and pieces, and we have had a few of these like kind of post-traumatic flashbacks that we haven't got the whole story. And we don't get the whole story either here, actually. We don't get the whole story till the end of how this night actually progressed. But it's a breakthrough. Her doctor's pleased because she's finally remembering, and it's all going to eventually come back to her. Her father isn't too pleased about this whole like things coming back to her. That's why he wants her to stay away from the graveyard. He'd rather her not remember what actually happened, it seems. But, this is the sort of thing that's deeply troubling. Probably explains a lot of her outbursts, maybe explains why she doesn't notice everyone around her is a piece of shit. And, she wants to remember just a little bit more. She hadn't remembered the accident. What's interesting is no one around her seems to remember this accident either, but they're all very self absorbed. We know this. One of the more self absorbed people, oh no, I totally forget his name. The guy that brings her to the chapel.
Rudy. Oh,
Rudy.
it's Rudy.
Yeah. One of the more self-absorbed people is Rudy, who actually gets into conversation with her about her having attended there before, which is news to us, right, as the audience. But she was there 4 years previous, before they all came, she says, which is not true. They've all been there this long. It's almost like this place is stopped in time, and they've all been there for 5 years now and have all known one another, but none of them seem to recall her. None of them talk about this accident. And it's weird to me. Is it an urban legend in that they recreate this accident in their little game all of the time? in that they heard that someone almost jumped that bridge in a car and now they attempt to recreate it, but they were fuzzy on who it was? Or did they all know full well that she almost died going over that bridge in a car with her mother who did die? And they think it's funny to recreate this? Like, it's just too wacky for me.
To me, it strikes me as a plot point in which, let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say that this is just a regular old high school and 4 years have passed. So that would have meant that they were all rich, snobby kids in grade nine, let's say. And then now they're in grade 12, or if it was in Canada and it's all shot in Montreal, they're in their OAC year. That doesn't exist anymore, but it did at the time.
Mhm.
And so they maybe they didn't know. Maybe they did vaguely hear about it. And then when they all started getting their licenses and the mythology over the years built up around that bridge, maybe they had wondered on a dare, perhaps, could they make the jump that this vehicle failed to do? And they never knew the name of the person. It became an urban legend, so to speak, even though it had actually happened. And I don't really know. I'm not making excuses for this because I know for a fact that this script has been done and redone. And even during filming this film, this script was changed quite dramatically. And we'll talk about that when we get to the end. But so there's a lot of possibilities about how this actually transpired in terms of the movie's plot. What we do know is that Virginia is not doing well because of this, and she is continuously having these flashbacks. Now, she is going to have what I think might just be one of the most insane, terrible dates with Rudy I have ever seen in my entire life. Now, gang, it's your old pal, Wes here, and I'm going to give you some dating advice. And if you think you don't need it, I think you do. And it's because if you are going to take a young lady, or really anybody, someone you fancy, on a walking date to go show her one of your favorite places, I beg you, I plead, perhaps I even command you, do not pull a knife on her and pull faces and try to scare her with no context. You are acting deranged. Like Rudy in this scene goes from kind of clowning around to actually just acting deranged and dangerous. And if you think that this scene is going to end with them laughing, haha, I got you. No, no, they're not going to end the scene there. They are going to end the scene as if, again, another red herring. Rudy has committed some kind of murder. There is blood. A priest has pulled a rope. It's pandemonium. Now they're all at the police station. More of their group is missing, including Rudy.
I am very interested in his choice of date, though. I will say, take Wes's advice very much, please. Except the bell tower is a pretty cute place for a date. Like that's pretty cool. I would like to go there. And me and Chris were talking about how that would be a perfect date for us. None of us would pull a knife on one another. We're not interested in cutting the bell rope whatsoever. Uh, it's cool though, and it's atmospheric. And it's another point where outside of the graveyard, this movie delves into proper classic, almost hammer horror territory with its setting. Although we have a broken-headed, idiotic teen youth imitating Quasimodo in a Goonie meatballs, Porky's kind of way. Absolutely deranged is right. He is acting deranged. And is the sort of person that as soon as he started like imitating Quasimodo to like a pushy degree, the date would be over. I would just walk away at that point. But we do also end the scene with a nice priest yelling, "Murder!" Like murder most foul. Yeah, it's adorable, kind of, but disjointed.
this will lead everybody to panic and confusion as they're searching the grounds for bodies. Now they're going to find, again, in a baffling fucking sequence, a scarf and a skull buried in the garden out front. Police are everywhere investigating. The student body is out there, and they're all looking desperately to see what is going on. It's fake. It's not real. It's more of Alfred's weird shit. Like,
Alfred's weird shit and Rudy's hijinks, because we see him kind of scurry away and check on the scarf at one point. Like, it's really, really dumb. But
I don't
yeah,
I
hijinks.
I don't know what to make of this. By the way, Rudy is just back. He's just back, and he comes back. Hey, what happened to you yesterday? What? You pulled a knife on me. What happened at all? This is one of those aspects of the film where, man, you got to pay attention to this fucking movie. Like, you really do. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't go leave the room, put it on pause, and you can't let your mind wander. This film commands your attention because it is going to throw so many curveballs. You are going to think that you're missing a scene, but you're not missing a scene. The scene is just not there. There's nothing bridging this together whatsoever. Somehow, Virginia has a complete gap in memory, and Rudy has no idea what happened to her. There's no explanation about where she could have gone. They were standing literally a foot apart. So you tell me, Rudy, what happened to this woman that was standing a foot apart from you? You cut your hand and she vanished into thin air. You went to get stitches, and 24 hours later, with all of the police and campus security and all of the student body, everyone looking for you and others, you just kind of showed up like Simple Simon, like, huh? What's going on, you guys? What?
Yeah. Yeah, and they pass that off as okay and normal because he does a little barrel roll out of the top tier of the library or whatever, and that's where he was all this time. I have no idea what they were trying to do to their audience at this point, but it worked in that. You're right. You pay rapt attention, and from here on in, it is a roller coaster of insanity.
Alfred, speaking of insanity, is going to. We're back at a foggy graveyard, speaking of Hammer horror. And who is there in the graveyard tending to her mother's grave? Now, forget the fact that this clearly means that Alfred, like, seems to be the norm of the top 10, is to encroach on Virginia's property without warning or word, stand behind her wearing black gloves, and slowly pull what looks like it could be a razor blade or something from his pocket, but not before, and I am not kidding, gang, not before Virginia, with the very shears she used to tend her mother's grave, turns and stabs Alfred in the stomach, killing him. He keels over dead. His hand reveals a white rose in its palm.
Now, this fits in an Italian film very, very wonderfully, and it's quite touching. If it was in another film, because in this film it's completely lost because it is just bookended by ghoulish insanity. What could have been a pretty nice scene and a very heartfelt scene is unfortunately ruined by what is surrounding it. I think this is a really well shot, like the rest of the movie, just really well shot, really well thought out, actually very well written and touching, because it does add a lot of normalcy to Alfred, where other people would say that he's just leching on her, much like Etienne did. Of course, he meets a grisly end. He seemed to have had, you know, a little more of a calm demeanor. He only has like 5 lines in the whole movie, I think. Like, he's mostly just standing there.
He doesn't talk much. He's quite awkward. Virginia does kiss him, though. And
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
even a sequence in which a fight breaks out earlier in the film between all of the dudes, just like at each other's throats like they all are. And she says, you know what, Alfred, you can buy me a drink. And they go and leave. So I'm not going to say that this is completely unwarranted, and this is definitely Alfred finding the nerve to make his good declaration of romantic feelings, perhaps make things a little bit more official, because she is kind of, nothing's really official with anyone, it doesn't seem like, but he does meet his end for his trouble. And now as the audience, we are sitting back and saying, okay, Virginia has a lot of psychological breaks. She has a lot of episodes. She has experienced a traumatic thing with her mother, and she has gone through experimental like brain surgery, essentially. So, okay, missing time, she is having breaks, and now we are going to what? It's hard to understand what the motivation of the plot would be up to this point, because this script is a bit Swiss cheesed because of some later on decisions. But we are going to end up in another dance. Like, they're all hanging out and dancing together, and you think, okay, Virginia and Rudy seem to have gotten on. They've smoked weed together up at this point. They've had a date. Alfred's dead, so he's out of the picture in terms of like a potential red herring or love interest. All the other dudes are dropping like flies. I guess we could just go ahead and say that they're together, so they're dancing with each other and having a fairly good time. But there's going to be a bit of an interjection, because old Steve, he's gonna like, can I have this dance? Can you go dance with Greg's girlfriend? Who, she's distraught. She's genuine, like, I haven't seen him since this morning. She's genuinely distraught that she can't find him. And so, hey, Rudy, can you go and dance with her? The reason why I'm pointing this out, this is the last we will ever see this character.
Meaning Rudy. Because
Yes.
we do see Amelia for a second, but yeah, just he's gone. He's gone. And there's another, like, Anne's dancing with somebody who's like, don't worry, I'll take care of you. And we're like, who the fuck are you? He's like some random dude. He's like absolutely no one we've ever seen before in this film. So I don't know if they were like trying to supplant Rudy somehow with somebody at that point. I don't know. But yeah, he disappears. And it's not like his fun way of disappearing where he reappears later. Well, not really anyway.
Let me ask you this, Lids. Shish kebab. Shish kebab. This shish kebab seems very much of its time, because it reminds me of fondue. And fondue was very much a product of the 1970s. Did you have one of those old fondue sets? We did growing up.
I have one now. I still have it, and I have not used it in a long time, but it's mint. Trust me. Fondue. I haven't thought of fondue since, well, the last time I cleaned out that cupboard with the fondue set in it.
We had an orange one growing up, and my dad really liked to do we're having a fondue night, he said. We would indeed have fondue. And so I haven't had it since I was a kid, but we even would do the dessert fondue where we were doing it with chocolate and stuff like that. So anyway, when I was looking at them eating that shish kebab in front of because I mean, shish kebab and fondue, like shish kebab is just the fondue if you just put it on a stick. But they do make that type of stuff. It seems very indicative of the time. And this is the most famous sequence from this film because it's right on the poster. Now, there are differences, because if you look at the poster art, it does appear that Rudy is the one that gets the shish kebab in his throat, except it's Steve who looks wildly. He's got blonde, poofy, curly hair and completely different features. And I'm not saying that this person that they use on the poster is Rudy, but it certainly looks like him more so than Steve does. And this is no fuss, no muss, no misinterpretation, no foggy nights. He is with Virginia alone in front of this monstrously huge fireplace. And she is going to look at him callously like a Bond villain and stab him in the fucking throat with shish kebab.
And it is the first time that we get to see, it's not a black glove killer scene, right? Like we see exactly what is happening. Virginia kills him in cold blood. And yeah, it's not as gory as we want it to be. We get more full frontal shish kebab penetration from the movie art, from the poster of a different guy. Yeah, this death leaves something to be desired. And it's weird because they're like eating some shish kebab and making out, and it's just gross. Like, I don't know, the food and making out thing has always been very gross to me, and this is no exception. After the death, though, she wakes up in the morning, and Anne is like, "Hey, sleepyhead, get out of bed. I'm in your front yard," kind of thing. Like, wow. We have had a lot of nightmare scenes and flashbacks, and the nightmare of her brain surgery was probably the most harrowing at this point. So we know there's something definitely going on with this girl. So it's not, if we hadn't had that established, that she is the most unreliable narrator, this probably would have come way, way out of left field. It still comes out of left field that she just killed the dude, and, he's gone, I guess, because she just invites her friend in like it's no big deal. It's very, very strange the way she's acting. But we've seen these scenes where she thinks that like her friends are the surgeons pulling pieces of her brain out, and that she's convinced that a piece of her brain wasn't put back in properly. Like some really wild things that she's saying, that her doctor's just passing it off with like, maybe you need a rest and a little nap. But yeah, she calls her friend in like it's no big deal. We're expecting from seeing other films where something like this happens, her friend Anne walking in the house and screaming because there's a dead body there, but that's not the case.
No, and if anyone were to ask me what I think is the most memorable sequence in this film, it's this sequence with Anne's body, because I find Virginia's bathroom quite striking. All that blue tile is very, very pretty, and I really like it. And the scene of her in a fetal position while the bathroom is filling with water because the tub is overflowing, because she invited Anne in. She was just going to take a shower and then they were going to head on their way. She has another nightmare, a daymare or whatever, hallucination, in which she sees her mother's body and then clearly Anne's body in the water, and then she wakes up yet again. And this is where we get like, is Anne dead? We presume so, but who's to say? Because we saw a body of sorts, but we know that later on Anne is officially missing. So add her to the roster, dude. We actually have another death. And aside from Bernadette, we haven't had a woman get killed in this movie in actually a little while. So, which is very interesting. The body count is predominantly male. I don't know why that's relevant. It's just something that I noticed over the years. But one of the things that is going to happen now is we are going to get an explanation for this horrible night that ended in the death of Virginia's mother. Lydia, would you like to take us away about this fucking lunatic situation?
I really like the mom because she reminds me a lot of VC Andrews' character. And this is where this movie takes a hard left into VC Andrews' territory. Out of horror, out of comedy, out of giallo, out of Hitchcockian suspense, and right into like 1980s television psychodrama with this screaming, horrible, drunken bitch. They are in, and it's not established very clearly, they are in the guest house. 4 years previous, the mother and Virginia setting up for her birthday, and it's, very much Laura Stone, the loved ones level of birthday party, like that was a prom extravaganza, but this is birthday party. Little hats, they got a nice cake, they've got everything decked out, waiting for her friends to show up. Her friends, who would that be, you ask? Well, of course, it's all these kids in the town, everyone that we've met so far. Like even Etienne, who's been there forever as an exchange student for whatever reason. But they aren't showing up. And the mother is getting drunker and angrier. And she has a real vendetta against everyone in this town, it seems. All of these very rich people. Well, she is rich now. She's richer than them. And she's going to show them. And they're all going to show up. And she's going to have a good birthday party for her daughter, I guess. But they're not showing up. And Virginia knows this because she says they don't know her. They're not her friends. These are just people in the town. She doesn't know them. And then the phone rings to sort of break a little tension. But no, it ramps up the tension because it's her father saying he's not going to make it for her birthday. She seems okay with this as from a child's perspective or a teenager's perspective of a parent who's very, very busy. I'm sure they have some sort of understanding, but he's treated like a deadbeat by this drunken bitch mother who is squatting in the guest house. I guess I get why they're having the party in the guest house. It keeps it cleaner. And if there's servants involved, they're probably more used to keeping the guest house cleaner, I guess. So it's already clean to begin with, so it's easy to clean after. I don't know. But he's not there. These teenagers from the town aren't showing up, who her mother wants to teach a lesson to. So she goes screaming in the car, in the rain, to the fence of Anne's father, screaming that they're to come to her daughter's birthday right away. It is so very VC Andrews, it's insane, because you get the idea that she's done something, or something was done to her by the elite of this town that has ostracized her entirely, and she's gonna show them. And even the groundskeeper is just like, go away, bitch, you're drunk, kind of attitude. That we're not really privy to the why at this point exactly, but it does explain why in the flashback sequences, before they end up in the water, they're already wet, because they've been standing in the rain screaming at their neighbors for an hour. That explains that.
There's something about Virginia's mom standing there in her blue dress, very indicative of the time, scowling and lecturing to no one while just pounding back gin or vodka or some kind of clear spirit, and then humiliating herself and her daughter even further. Could you imagine anything more outrageous than somebody making you go to a party that you're not invited to? All of her friends are in there. You're going to let her in. That is monstrous. Like, why would I want to go in there? Am I supposed to just show up? Hey guys, my mom made me crash the party. It's my birthday and I invited you to my birthday party. But since you're all here for Anne's party, can I show up too? It's the thought process.
So weird.
The thought process is just unthinkable. It doesn't make any conceivable sense, but she is drunk, she is angry, and she is going to get herself killed and traumatize her daughter for the rest of her life.
Is this the first Karen, maybe?
It might definitely be the first Karen. She's acting like one. She is acting just, I know what's interesting is beforehand we have fits and starts about how we are going to tell this woman's story throughout the narrative. Virginia loves her and misses her and has tender things to say, but yet all of the adults in the room don't really just leave your mother's grave alone. And, we have to move past this and you're repressing memories. And then we see the sequence of her escaping the car first. And their mother seems heroic, self-sacrificing, coherent, and saying, get out of here, save yourself. You have to get out of here. And then again, it's not shedding proper light onto what was happening. And then when we see her mother first now at this guest house, oh my God, like she is monstrous. If they won't come here, we'll come to them. And then to see the peak of fiery madness of her at that gate where her daughter Virginia has to come on mom, like let's just go and I'll get you home. Like she becomes the caretaker of this drunken hysteric woman. And I just find that this is so fascinating, and you start to feel like you are getting a clear picture about what is actually going on.
We've realized this because Virginia's realized this. And what would you do if you realized all this? Well, the same thing Virginia does. Just start fucking screaming and call your psychologist, because she just basically spends the rest of the movie screaming and in a puddle of just despair. And it's it fits her, right? So she calls her doctor, who you start to not really trust Dr. Faraday, because you didn't already, but like it almost feels like he's meant to be more in on this than he is, just because of his demeanor and the fact that he just sits her in a chair, gives her some food, and is like, okay, maybe you should have yet another nap. Maybe that's what you need, is to just sleep through all of this. um it's not helpful. But I mean, the cops come to the door, he shoos them away, tells the cops that she's sleeping. The police offer that they're looking for Anne because her vehicle's parked across the road. And you almost get the feeling that if this was a more sophisticated film, that he would be in on this, that he has been covering for her. And maybe he did this for her mother or something. But no, they just leave it as it is, that he's just going to shoo off the police and try and take care of Anne in his way as she has more memories come back. Not that she needs any more at this point. She's already a screaming, blubbering mess.
She is going to find herself in a situation in which she is alone in theory yet again. Dr. Faraday is going to get a poker to the back of his head. It's going to erupt in a bucket of blood like many other sequences in this film, and he is down for the count. But true to his word, Lydia, there's another adult man that is about to show up here, perhaps less or more appropriate than Dr. Faraday in his absence. It's Virginia's own father. Now, he did have to go away on business, but he promised that he would try to make it back. Now, the last time we saw her father make this promise on her birthday, he didn't actually make it back. And so perhaps this would be a repeat of 4 years ago. But no, he does show up. Now, he does encounter Amelia, who is Greg's girlfriend. She is just standing in a dress. So another nice thing about this is at least one person did show up for Virginia's birthday, complete in a pretty dress with a wrapped gift. So we don't know where Rudy is. We don't need to know. But her father discovers that his wife's grave has been robbed and there is a light on in that little cottage. And we are going to be treated to a sequence that, I am not going to lie, I did not fucking understand what was happening the first time I saw it. And now I obviously understand the plot quite well, but at the time, the initial viewing, holy fucking shit, I was so confused. But we see there's old Virginia, and she has everybody. She's arranged the bodies like she's Jason Voorhees. Everyone looks great, super gory. And we have a bonus body, Lydia. Her mother has joined us for the proceedings.
And she's really gory. I thought Amelia was bleeding in the graveyard, that she was standing at the grave crying in the rain, which is just adorable, clutching a gift. But I thought she was bleeding from the stomach. And I can't see anywhere online when I look at the different summaries or like the body counts and such. She's not included. So she didn't die, I don't think.
No.
And she's not at the birthday party. So she just stands in perpetuity in the graveyard crying.
Yeah, shocked from the horror. Listen, at least we know where she's at. Where the fuck is Rudy? We saw him go try to dance with somebody, and where is he? We don't know. And we'll never know. Just spoilers, we'll never know where that dude is. But we are going to get a sequence in which Virginia and her father are going to exchange some words.
What words do they exchange? I remember her putting the hat on him.
Yes, that is the it's actions and words, Lydia. It's actions and words. He is going to die like a dog. This slash actually comes quite quickly. And when we look around the bodies, we got one more surprise for everybody. And this surprise is extremely important because this was not the original script. Now, the spoiler is, the twist of this film is that it was never Virginia in a extremely like a Mission Impossible latex mask where you would never know that it was not the person. Fuck voice, fuck body type, fuck everything. This mask does it all. It is Anne. This is the person that perhaps Virginia was closest to. Hard to say because she was just making out with every dude in some capacity, and she's had a few tender scenes with Anne, I suppose. It's like I said, I could have used some more scenes with Anne to establish her as more of a friend, but it is Anne. It is the person who was also having a birthday party the same day as Virginia. So we got a double birthday. Now that does happen. There are some people egregiously born on the same day that I am. But this this happens to be a half-sister situation. And Anne is Virginia's evil sister. Now, why is this the plot? And why is it so confusing? The reason lies in the casting. Melissa Sue Anderson. It's old Mary Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. And this was her big film debut. She was a child star for many years. Little House on the Prairie, to a certain generation, was a humongous hit, a very well-known show. That's definitely how I knew her. I've seen every episode of Little House on the Prairie. And people watching this film as it was being made, the producers and everybody, said, this is Mary Ingalls. She's too good. The audience is not going to buy it. They're not going to accept her as the killer. We got to change this. So they made a last minute switcheroo to the plot, and they decided to go with it was a mask the entire time, and Virginia is not the killer. It is in fact the less likable Anne. And maybe that would explain why there's so few scenes of her being likable, because they didn't want to be in a situation where, oh no, maybe Anne's actor is too likable too. So who's the killer?
What's weird to me is that they didn't really need the mask. The mask is only for our benefit because we saw the shish kebab scene. That's really, really it. Like, they could have fixed everything else. Or they could have just shown somebody getting killed by, like Steve getting killed by that shish kebab, and not shown their lovely date in front of the roaring fire or whatever. Like, it's just weird that they landed on that. And it's triply weird to me that they landed on that, because audiences of the time loved nothing more than seeing Laura Ingalls in strife and danger, and having her be a psychotic fucking killer that actually survives, mind you, and could actually survive without just being incarcerated for the rest of her life if they had followed what I suspect the script had been. They would have ate it up. From the press package for Happy Birthday to Me, Melissa Sue Anderson makes her move from the prairie to a mysterious prep school. After 7 years on Little House on the Prairie, Melissa Sue Anderson has a new mailing address. It reads, In Columbia Pictures' Happy Birthday to Me, she's enrolled at a sinister prep school where someone is cutting into the student body. I love
This is
the
great.
80s puns. This is, yeah, it's not too much longer, so bear with me here. Cutting into the student body. Huh, what yucks.
Just for the record, I wouldn't care if this was 9 more paragraphs. I insist you read the entire thing.
The psychological chiller, not a horror movie, the psychological chiller marks the movie debut of the 18-year-old beauty whose tragedies on the American frontier kept viewers moist-eyed and ratings high for nearly a decade. The actress admits that when she moved to the little house as an 11-year-old, she was blissfully unaware of what the writers had in mind for her. But each new season had her character, Mary Ingalls, faced with fresh woes, toxic appendicitis, scarlet fever, blindness, and marriage to a sightless classmate, and 2 miscarriages. It is a matter of record that the more she suffered, the higher the ratings climbed. And that's the line that clinches it for me. The producer of a competing show on another network was once asked how he thought that his series was going to fare against The Little House. If Mary Ingalls doesn't come down with whooping cough, he said, or lose another baby, there's a chance.
That's one of the most egregious things about Mary Ingalls' character is how much she got screwed on that fucking show. There's entire videos you can watch about people breaking down how egregious the treatment of that character was on the show compared to like any other character. It's wild, but it definitely was pretty funny when you think about it in that context. I really appreciate you bringing that presser to our attention.
Well, I really think that the audiences at the time, especially hungry, starved for news of death and destruction from the Vietnam War, starved for main name actors in horror already, because it was a lot of unknown actors in horror at the time. Someone might be like, well, Kevin Bacon, but that was like one of his first roles. He was a no name. Everyone was a no name. She was a name actor in a big picture, a big horror picture. They would have ate it up if she would have been the villain. And she would have finally gotten some sort of comeuppance from being treated like absolute dog shit and being like the frowny face queen of America at the time. So like, I think that they would have ate it up, and they loved seeing her in strife. They say it, they know it. Why they decided to walk back from that, I'll never understand.
Yeah, I do very much agree with you. I think that like it reminds me of Little Girl That Lived Down the Lane, you know, that old Jodie Foster film, right? Sometimes you want to see somebody just commit some sinister shit with no comeuppance. That would be great. And I agree with you. I think nowadays we would have a better understanding of what people want from their characters and their actors. And I think nowadays people would go so far as to want to dare you to do it, to dare you to push those boundaries. And people love when actors play against type, but perhaps then it was just a more old-fashioned feeling about it. You don't want to see these types of things happen to these types of characters, or you want everyone to believe that this actress, God forbid an actress try to play a role as opposed to play to audiences' expectations. I think that this film would be very interesting if they had kept it as the original. But I also agree with you that there's no reason why they couldn't have cut around the fact that they revealed her face 2 different times while she was committing these crimes. There's a lot of ways that you can cut around that. If you're doing reshoots anyways, you clearly are reshooting the last sequence. I mean, I know that it was going on as they were filming it, but just go back and shoot a couple of scenes of somebody in heavy shadow where you don't see their face. Get your second unit to shoot a couple more scenes of a black glove committing these crimes, and then go ahead and do that. But they wanted to use the footage that they had kept, and so they went with this mask sequence. And we have the evil Virginia, who's actually Anne, revealed to be such. And her motivation is such that her mother, Virginia's mother, rather, had an affair. And that was the result of Virginia's birth and potentially ruining her family's life.
Yeah. Another VC Andrews reason that is barely holds water, because all sorts of powerful and rich men have side pieces or whatever. And it happens to be something that's used in dramatic filmmaking a lot. Secret Children. It's used better a lot of the time, and it's usually used with foresight, where this was an afterthought, clearly. So it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't hold water, or why she'd been so successful in this, because they do show the yakety sax Benny Hill cut for a second of her chloroforming her over and over, because this is why Virginia doesn't remember everything, because Sue was so prepared and deft at putting this makeup on so quickly, this slip-on mask. At this time in 2025, we are only just beginning to have this sort of technology in latex and mask making available to the general public. So how this twat in 1980 had gotten a hold of it, I'll never know. To chloroform Jenny, do something with her body. I mean, tuck her into bed or whatever the hell, and then do this heinous murder, clean up, usually, and then go about her daily life. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. There's no way that this could actually happen. But it is funny to see her chloroforming her over and over and over again.
It can't be good to be chloroformed that much. It just can't be. There has to be some kind of lasting damage. Chloroform can't just be an excuse to make someone go to sleep for a while with no memory and have no lasting effects. But I'm going to tell you that all of that chloroforming didn't slow Virginia down. She is going to eliminate Anne, toot sweet. And we are going to have a situation in which now Virginia, holding the knife with no witnesses to explain what's really going on, standing over the bodies of almost a dozen people.
And the recently exhumed body of her mother, which is like creep show ready, crypt keeper perfection of rotting, putrefacting corpse. It looks a lot fresher than 4 years old, but who knows how quick or slow something rots in that sort of soil. But like, gross. It must stink in there to high heaven. Now, I had thought that her dad was going to bite it due to an axe because of some of the one sheets with an axe through the cake, and I was waiting for this like really like bombastic axe murder at the party scene, which never happened.
No, it could have been an idea, but they did away with it when they made some changes to the script. It could have been Rudy. Rudy's a body that we never got. Amelia is a body that we never got. They didn't eliminate the entire top 10. Maybe they thought the body count was too egregious. This also reminds me that if not for the whodunit aspect of the film, it would only barely feel like a slasher, wouldn't it? It would very much feel more like a thriller or a giallo. And instead, or as you had pointed out, if you see Andrew's story, where we just know who the killer is the entire time, which is, I guess, is what the intention is. I suppose a film that would be similar to that is The Little Girl Who Lived Down the Lane, right? Like that, the whole premise of that film is somebody getting away with multiple murders. So I think it could have worked as a film, but I think by adding this whodunit aspect, it does very firmly plant it into slasher territory. But I think some of the things that just seem weird about it are the leftovers from the plot that never would manifest because they had changed it because of their fear of, I suppose, making Melissa Sue Anderson not believable as the villain of the story. But it's a shame, but it doesn't necessarily ruin anything for me. It does, however, explain a lot of the chaos of the script.
It does. I don't know. I want this to be remade. I enjoyed it. I think it needs a script doctor, obviously. I mean, who doesn't? I like some of the visuals that they have going on here. I like the idea of the unreliable narrator. I wish she was the killer, even though it's so very transparent too, right? Like you kind of want her to not be the killer also, because it's just too cliche. That or lean heavily into the psychodrama and not make it a slasher whatsoever. Keep it a V.C. Andrews giallo. That's a kind of cool mishmash of subgenres, I think. So yeah, I enjoyed it though. I will say, like we said earlier in the show, there's a point in this where you sit up in your seat and go, what the actual fuck am I watching? I can't look away. It's a car crash, or 11 car crashes over and over and over again.
So what do we got next for them?
Coming up next, we're still going to stay back in time with House by the Cemetery, which I absolutely enjoyed. So yeah, maybe we'll get into more modern movies when we get into a little bit of a Stephen King jag with Stephen King-a-Palooza, which we do every single summer. But we're delaying it a little longer to stay back in time with movies that maybe did feed the imagination of a young Stephen King.
Yes, we're going to be stepping into the shoes of Lucio Fulci, and we're going to be doing one of his more well-known films that's not zombie. So I'll be excited to delve in. This has been a little while since I have seen that, so it'll be nice to revisit it and watch it properly for the show.
And it's not going to be a laugh a minute for me like and it's not going to be a laugh a minute for me like Don't Torture a Duckling. It's actually a very scary film, and I actually like this as far as the giallos go. It's a far more modern one, Americanized one. It's more tailored to American audiences, and not like that's always a good thing, but here it definitely worked for me.
There is a bit of laughter that you can get out of that weird little boy that is throughout the picture, so there's at least that much.
I think we'll be having fun with this, and then we'll be leading into a selection of Stephen King films,
which I am very excited for. But in the meantime, I'm Wes Knipe.
And I'm Typical Lydia.
And you've been listening to Dead Air. If you like this show, you can find more episodes and other content on splatterpictures.net, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts. We also upload all episodes to YouTube now, if you'd prefer to listen that way. You can find us across social media like Instagram, X, and TikTok, and the show is edited by Lydia Peaver and hosted by Lydia Peaver and me, Wes Knipe. We'll see you next time.